Worst deaths traveling abroad. Every year, travelers set out for adventure, but some never return home. In this video, we break down the real stories behind the world's most shocking disappearances and deaths abroad. You'll see how ordinary trips turned into international mysteries, how investigations unfolded, and what clues were left behind. From missing persons to unsolved murders, we'll cover the facts, the evidence, and the unanswered questions. 1. The disappearance of Natalee Holloway, Aruba. Natalee Holloway, an 18-year-old American high school graduate from Mountain Brook, Alabama, was on a celebratory trip with her classmates in May 2005. It was supposed to be a carefree week of sun, sand, and farewells before college. On the night of May the 30th, the last day of their trip, Natalee went out with friends to Carlos and Charlie's bar. She was last seen leaving the bar in the early hours of May the 30th with Joran van der Sloot, a Dutch national residing in Aruba, and two Surinamese brothers, Deepak and Satish Kalpoe. Natalee missed her flight home, and her parents, particularly her mother Beth, launched a frantic search.
I needed the answers as to what happened to Natalee.
The Aruban authorities quickly focused on van der Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers, who initially claimed they dropped Natalee off at her hotel. Their stories, however, began to unravel under questioning, riddled with inconsistencies and changing alibis. Despite multiple arrests and subsequent releases due to lack of definitive evidence, the trio remained central to the investigation. The case garnered immense international media attention, fueled by the mystery, the picturesque setting, and the sheer desperation of Natalee's family. Countless searches were conducted across the island, involving hundreds of volunteer dogs and even specialized dive teams, but no trace of Natalee or her remains were ever found. Joran van der Sloot, a master manipulator, continued to toy with the family and authorities for years, offering false leads and even attempting to extort money from Beth Holloway. His web of lies eventually caught up with him. Years later, in 2010, Van der Sloot fled to Peru, where he murdered Stephanie Flores, a 21-year-old Peruvian woman, on the 5-year anniversary of Natalee's disappearance. He was convicted of Flores' murder in Peru in 2012. In October 2023, Joran van der Sloot finally confessed to Natalee Holloway's murder in exchange for a plea deal related to the extortion case.
He finally confessed that he killed Natalee. He described when and how he killed her.
He admitted to hitting Natalee with a cinder block after she rejected his advances and then disposing of her body in the ocean. While a confession brought some semblance of closure, Natalee's body has never been recovered.
No longer the suspect in my daughter's murder. He is the killer.
2. The murder of Meredith Kircha, Perugia, Italy. On November the 1st, 2007, Meredith Kircha, a 21-year-old British exchange student, was found dead in a bedroom in Perugia, Italy. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed. Her body was discovered by her Italian flatmates and Amanda Knox, her American roommate, after they noticed signs of a break-in and blood in the apartment. The scene was chaotic, with blood stains on the floor and walls, and Kircha's body partially covered by a duvet. Amanda Knox and her boyfriend, Rafael Solicito, quickly became suspects. Police questioned them for several days. Knox gave conflicting statements, at one point implicating her boss, Patrick Lumumba, but later said this was under police pressure. Lumumba was soon cleared. He had a solid alibi and no evidence linked him to the crime. Forensic evidence at the scene pointed to another man, Rudy Guidi. His fingerprints and DNA were found in Kircha's room and on her body. Guidi was arrested in Germany and extradited to Italy. He admitted being at the scene, but denied killing Kircha. Rudy Guidi was tried separately and convicted in October 2008, and he was sentenced to 30 years, later reduced to 16 on appeal. Amanda Knox and Rafael Solicito went on trial in January 2009. The prosecution claimed the murder was the result of a sex game gone wrong involving all three. The case relied heavily on two pieces of forensic evidence: the kitchen knife from Solicito's apartment, said to have Knox and Kircha's DNA, and a bra clasp from the crime scene, said to have Solicito's DNA. Both pieces of evidence were later criticized for possible contamination and poor handling. In December 2009, Knox was sentenced to 26 years and Solicito to 25 years in prison for murder and sexual assault. The verdict was based on the prosecution's theory and the disputed forensic evidence. In 2011, an appeal court reviewed the case. Independent experts found the DNA evidence unreliable. The court also noted the lack of Knox and Solicito's DNA in Kircher's room, despite the room being covered in Guida's DNA. On October 3, 2011, both Knox and Solicito were acquitted and released after 4 years in prison. However, in 2013, Italy's highest court ordered a retrial, saying the acquittal had not properly considered all evidence. In 2014, the Florence court found them guilty again. Knox, by then back in the US, was sentenced to 28.5 years and Solicito to 25 years. On March 27, 2015, Italy's Supreme Court definitively acquitted both Knox and Solicito, stating there was a stunning flaw in the investigation and no reliable evidence linking them to the crime. The court said the case was built on faulty forensics and speculation, not facts. Rudy Guidi's conviction remained. He was the only person found to have physically attacked Kircher. 3. The disappearance of Chris Cremers and Lisanne Froon, Buckhead, Panama. Chris Cremers, 21, and Lisanne Froon, 22, were Dutch students who traveled to Panama in March 2014. They planned to learn Spanish and volunteer with children in Buckhead, a small town near the mountains. They arrived in Buckhead March 29, 2014, and stayed with the local host family. On April 1, 2014, around 11 a.m., Chris and Lisanne set out to hike the El Pianista Trail, a popular route near Buckhead. They wore light clothes and carried a small backpack with essentials: 2 phones, a camera, some cash, water, and snacks. They did not return that evening. The host family became worried when their dog, who had accompanied the woman, returned home. The next day, the woman missed an appointment with a local guide. Their families in the Netherlands were alerted after they failed to make contact. A search began with local police, volunteers, and later Dutch investigators. Flyers were distributed and rewards were offered, but no trace was found for weeks. On June the 11th, 2014, over 2 months after the disappearance, a local woman found Lisanne's blue backpack by a riverbank near Alto Romero, far from the trail. Inside were both women's phones, a camera, cash, sunglasses, and personal items. The backpack was dry and clean despite heavy rains in the area, raising questions about how it got there. The phones show that about 6 hours into the hike, both women tried to call emergency services 112 and 911. None of the calls connected due to lack of signal. Over the next several days, dozens more attempts were made. Lisanne's Samsung phone stopped working on April the 6th. Chris's iPhone was turned on and off until April the 11th. But after April the 5th, the correct PIN was never entered, suggesting someone else may have tried to use it. The camera contained photos from April the 1st, showing the women on the trail smiling and relaxing. Then on April the 8th, the week after they vanished, 90 photos were taken between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Most were dark, but some showed the jungle, their belongings arranged on rocks, and the back of Chris's head with what looked like blood.
Out of all the images taken over the day and the early hours of the morning on April 8th, only one photo was deleted and was unable to be recovered. Image 509.
One photo in the sequence was missing, deleted in a way that suggested it was removed using a computer, not just a camera. After the backpack was found, searchers discovered human remains in the same area: a boot with a foot, inside a pelvic bone, and later 33 scattered bones were identified as belonging to Chris and Lisanne. Lisanne's bones still had some skin, while Chris's bones appeared unnaturally white as if bleached. Some of their clothes were found folded on a rock. DNA tests confirmed the remains. Panamanian authorities suggested the women got lost, fell, and died from exposure or injuries. The area is remote with steep drops and fast rivers. Some private investigators and family members questioned the official story. The clean backpack, missing photographs, and the way the remains were scattered led to suspicions of foul play. There were also reports of other disappearances in the region. The investigation was criticized for poor handling. Some evidence was not properly collected or tested. The case remains unsolved with no official cause of death. 4. The murder of Peter Falconio, Outback, Australia. Peter Falconio, a 28-year-old British backpacker, and his girlfriend Joan Leese were traveling through Australia in July 2001. They were driving a Volkswagen camper van along the Stuart Highway, a remote road in the Northern Territory heading north from Alice Springs. On the night of July 14, 2001, a white Toyota Land Cruiser pulled up behind their van near Barrow Creek. The driver, later identified as Bradley John Murdoch, signaled for them to pull over, claiming there was a problem with their vehicle. Peter got out to check. Joan heard a gunshot and never saw Peter again. Murdoch then threatened Joan with a gun, tied her hands behind her back with cable ties, and put a sack over her head. He forced her into his vehicle, but she managed to escape, running barefoot in the bush. She hid for 5 hours while Murdoch searched for her with a dog and a flashlight. Eventually, she flagged down a passing truck and was rescued. Police discovered blood at the scene of the crime, which was later confirmed as Peter Falconio's. The couple's van was found abandoned with signs of a struggle, but there was no body, bullet, or shell casing. Joan Leese, the only witness, gave a detailed description of the attacker and the vehicle, which played a crucial role in the investigation. The case quickly became a major news story in both Australia and the UK, prompting a massive manhunt and extensive investigation.
Or suspicions about what might have happened on that night, and dare I say it, I'll say it now, I think the most likely scenario was that this was a drug deal that went wrong in some way or other. Peter Falconio might have been taking some drugs up the highway on behalf of Murdoch, or maybe some other person. Maybe he reneged on whatever deal he...
Bradley John Murdoch, a mechanic and drug runner from Western Australia, was arrested in November 2003. Key evidence in the case included DNA matching Murdoch, which was found on Joan Lee's t-shirt and on the cable ties used to bind her and on the gear stick of the couple's van. CCTV footage placed Murdoch in the area at the time of the attack, and witnesses confirmed that his movements matched the timeline of the crime, further linking him to the incident. The trial began in October 2005 in Darwin. Joan Leese identified Bradley Murdoch in court as her attacker. The prosecution argued that Murdoch shot Peter Falconio and attempted to abduct Joan. The defense questioned Joan's memory and suggested she might have seen Murdoch's photo before making the identification, but the jury found her testimony credible. Despite the lack of a murder weapon or body, the DNA evidence was overwhelming. On December 13, 2005, Bradley Murdoch was found guilty of murder, assault, and attempted abduction. He was sentenced to life in prison with a non-parole period of 28 years. Murdoch has consistently maintained his innocence and has never revealed the location of Peter Falconio's body. Despite extensive searches, Peter Falconio's body has never been found. Over the years, police have followed up on tips and even tested bone fragments found in the outback, but none have been linked to Falconio. In 2016, the Northern Territory introduced a no-body, no-parole law, meaning Murdoch cannot be released until he reveals the location of Falconio's remains. Falconio's family continues to appeal for information to recover his body and bring closure to the case.